Hi everyone, my name is Jeff Poole and welcome to PL Talks. PL Talks is a passion project of our law firm, Poole Lawyers. We attempt to bring you all types of Alberta artists. Today, I have the distinct pleasure of bringing you some leading contemporary visual artists, Loda Anzola and Matthew Waddell. They're digital artists involved in the fields of interactive media and projection mapping. They've been working together for the last 6 years and been partners in life for the past 8 years. They create their own projects and they create projects under their collective AZMA. During the time that they have been working on projects together, they've done over 15 large-scale projection mappings and interactive installations that explore the relationship between human interaction and digital media. Loda is an animator and digital artist. She's based in Calgary but was born in Bogotá, Colombia. Her work merges analog and digital storytelling techniques. Matt is interested in examining the ways technology manipulates our understanding of the world as well as our cultural and individual identities. Between them, they are multi-talented and multi-awarded artists, including so many that we joked that we could spend the whole day or the whole evening here discussing the awards that they have been nominated for and the awards they have won. Matt is a graduate of Concordia University, where he studied electroacoustic composition and sound technology. He's won numerous awards for sound theater and been nominated for a total of 14 since 2010. Now he spends almost all of his time on large-scale projection mapping projects. He met Loda and Matt met across a crowded cafeteria at the Banff Center, where they both had residencies in 2012. They both speak fluent English and fluent Spanish. Loda speaks Spanish naturally because she's from Bogotá, Colombia. She has a degree from, if I can pronounce this, the University of Javeriana. Close. In Bogotá, and she has a master's from Bohus University in Weimar in Germany. We're going to chat today about what it means to be doing new media. We have in our previous discussions established for me that it's really hard to do. It involves both artistic talent and a primary and deep understanding of technology and code and computers in general. What we're hoping to do is introduce you to a few of the projects that Loda and Matt have done in the past couple of years. I wonder if you guys could start by explaining for me and for our audience what you mean by new media.
Sure.
For sure.
First, thanks so much for having us, Jeff. It's really nice to be in front of the camera. We're usually the ones behind the camera running the PL Talk, so it's nice to be on the other side. So thanks so much.
We can talk a little bit about new media art and why it's so hard to define it. Usually what new media art entails is that you're working with new media to do your artwork. And defining what new media is usually related to the technology that you're using, and technology evolves over time. So new media applies to many different kinds of art, and under that umbrella we can find computer art, coding art, sound art, animation, computer graphics, robotics, even biotechnology. So it's a form that usually explores the medium itself and often questions the use of technology. But it also incorporates an element of participation from not the user, but the audience that is involved in the work. But it's not all new media art is interactive or participatory. It's one of the elements that usually it's across other disciplines. And one of the things that I like to say is like, you know, when you're doing a painting, it's a specific technique, right? It's like putting pigment on a canvas, and there's many different genres of painting. But when we talk about new media arts, it's like we're using different kinds of technology. And that's why it's so hard to categorize it. It also like explores, you know, there's an element of research for sure, and like understanding this technology and exploring it. There's also politics and activism, and there's also like art exploration within it.
Yeah, I think
yeah.
a lot of the work that we've focused on involves an element of video. It's usually made using computers and custom-made software, and usually there's an element of interaction in it as well. And when most of the work that we're exploring these days involves projection mapping, which maybe not everybody's familiar with that term, but what that entails is projecting video onto a surface. I mean, the most simple kind of boring form of it is taking a projector and projecting a movie onto a wall, right? Maybe some of us have done that. But what we're interested in exploring is kind of pushing how video can be integrated into an environment in a meaningful way. So instead of just projecting on a rectangular box onto a flat wall, we're interested in exploring different surfaces such as buildings and creating content that actually fits onto the shape of the building. So when we build the video content, it actually aligns to the characteristics of the building. So it takes the windows into account, it takes the shape of the roof, etc. You can also project onto three-dimensional objects, such as sculpture, and we've been exploring a lot of that lately. We like to have an element of interactivity as a way of giving people kind of autonomy or a sense of belonging within the artwork. So instead of it just being kind of a passive experience, we try to allow people to take part in the experience and be part of it in some way. That can mean having their face projected onto the side of a building in like a huge scale, or maybe using some sort of interface to control the projections that they're seeing.
That seems like a really good segue for us to chat about what I've come to call the Bear Project.
Yeah.
So I've asked these guys to share with you a project that they did and to understand the time frame and the collaboration. One of the things that is really fun about Matt and Loda is that they collaborate with other artists to pursue a joint and collaborative vision. So maybe you could just tell us a little bit about the Bear.
Yeah.
Yes. So we collaborated with Don Cannell, who is an amazing sculpture artist based in Santa Fe. And we were approached by Beaker Head, a festival here in Calgary, to that he has that is called the Long View Polar Bear. So what we did was, in a very short amount of time, we get to talked to Don Cannell, and he explained what is the meaning of this piece to him. And when you are collaborating, you want to, respect the other artist and find a way to augment what, I guess that's what we were doing. We're augmenting his vision of the piece because the piece was already built, which was very nice for us because the sculpture was ready. This is a very large scale. A sculpture is 36 feet tall.
Yeah.
So it's pretty massive, and it's all made of white card hoods that Don Cannell found and recycled. So he works a lot with this idea of recycling, and of course the bear for him represents and it's a symbol of climate change and global warming. So you want to talk about what we did, or should we go to the video?
We can look at the video and then we can maybe explain what you'll see in the video here.
Yeah.
So the video is 1 minute long. We can just watch it.
Yeah, so this is our documentation for the long view polar bear and the projection mapping we made on it. This piece was a beautiful piece, and I think one of my favorite projects that we've done together. I just love it because I think it's a very good example of how you can combine a concept and technology. What we created for this piece was a way to integrate two different moments. So we have a moment that we call maybe the idle moment, while the piece is not being used in the interaction part, and then the interaction part. For the static moment, we decided to, we ask ourselves, how can we represent climate change and talk about it from Calgary? So we had this amazing footage that we took together with a drone of the Bow River melting in the winter, and that's what we project on the bear. And it really captures the texture. And because the bear is white and we can see all the different colors being projected on, it really captures that ice melting that also talks about climate change and how, Calgary now, it's being affected by it in some ways. And the river is, I guess, the big example because there's some floods that have been going on, and anyway. So we wanted to show the river. And for the interaction part, we integrated a heart sensor in the piece. So you could put your finger on this kind of a pillow that resembled the skin of a bear, and we actually warm it. And when you place your hand and your heart, there was a heart sensor there that took the information of the blood flowing through your veins, finding your pulse, and then the animations with pulse with your heartbeat. So the animation started with this beautiful kind of colors of aurora borealis pulsing with your heart, and then slowly transform in the bear getting hotter and hotter and hotter. There's some photos here that you can see kind of like the bear starting to become orange and then fully red. And when it's completely hot, then you can see yourself in the heart of the bear. And it was a subtle way to saying that you are also part of climate change, and we all have some part in it. This is where you can see your face.
I just love it there at the end when the dad and his child appear in the heart of the bear. I just think that's creative. And I also think that what's amazing is from start to finish on the project, you just had 2 weeks.
Yes.
We did.
A lot of these projects happen so fast. From the idea floats around for a while, and there's back and forth with whoever is signing off on the contract and the money ultimately, and then it's like, okay, it's happening, and then you have a very short period of time often to develop things. So I mean, that's a challenge that we face, and something that we are trying to get better at managing. And I mean, sometimes you can't control it, but that's one of the many challenges that we face when building this sort of thing, is time and resources and people.
Yes, and that's why we would like to collaborate too, because this piece was mainly made and programmed by us, but we have other artists who helped it happen. We have Mark Laval, who's our technical director, who's always helping us with the setup and install, and also Holly Totten designed the interface, so the pillow where the heart sensor rested. So it's a time issue, but also allowed us to, collaborate with other artists. That it's part of what we want to do too. We want to find enthusiastic new media artists in Calgary and explore this medium with them.
So one of the things too that you like to do is you like to give people like me and other people looking at your projects the chance to participate. And this is the part I've been looking forward to for the whole time you've been talking.
Yes.
This is when I get to control some of the art. So what I have asked these guys to do is I've asked them to give me a shot at maneuvering some of their art. So behind them is a piece that Loda and Matt created for contemporary Calgary, and part of the fun, and if you can see me for a second, I'll show you what I'm going to do. So I have these little buttons, and if we go back to the screen behind, I get to turn these buttons and create different kinds of pieces that are in fact created by Matt and Loda, but which I get the feeling as I'm running it that I created. And so what I've asked Matt and Loda to do, now that you've seen how talented I am, is to take you back to the other side of the studio and to show you on the screen how something like this is created. It's a very time-consuming and special process. So, turn it over to you guys.
Sure. 1 second while we just change positions here.
Yes. So we usually work in a software called Touch Designer. Touch Designer is a visual programming software. And what we mean by visual programming is that we use visuals to program, so these little boxes, instead of lines of code, as I'm sure you might be familiar with. So we're gonna explain how we built this piece. This is a network system, and this is how it looks. So when you're programming, and you're coding, it has a specific order, and it's very logical. In the same way, you can think about this as a chain. So each box is connected to another box, and all these boxes has different functions that changes things, and when you put them in the order you want, you'll achieve results like this. So how did we do that? We have a box here that is called geometry, and we're gonna go inside it.
So here, you can see we start with a, this is the shape that we start with, which is a modified version of this actually, which is a torus. So we turn this into kind of a square, kind of diamond shape, and we do a few processes on it, and then we copy it here. And so you can see we've made 2 versions of it, and one of them we're rotating. So each one of these object boxes here, it performs a range of various functions. So this one is copying it, but it also allows us to do things like rotate or move it. So right now we're moving it on the, or we're rotating it on the x-axis. And this value that's in green here that's actually the value that we've given to the user to be able to manipulate. So I'm just going to simulate what that might look like when Jeff, turns the dial. You can see here that I'm moving this value here, and it's causing this other shape to rotate on the y-axis. So we chose this out of many different parameters that we could have chosen based on kind of artistic and aesthetic values, right? We thought this looked nice. But what you'll notice is there's so many parameters on just this one object here. For example, this changes the size of it. Like we could have given the user the ability to change the size, but we thought maybe it was a little too much, right? So we decided to allow them to change the one axis of rotation. So once we've done that, we then continue to process this base shape.
And before we process it, you find here these different colors that are applied to the shape. We made this little button that if you press it, you see the colors changing. So that's a nice feature. And what I bring this up is because this is a real-time processing software, meaning that you don't have to wait hours, minutes to see the processing changing. You just see it immediately. So this is very important for us. What we did after it was kind of compose it with a ramp. A ramp is just these vertical lines. They're also animated, moving from left to right. And what we're doing is using them, think about it as a reflection. And we're displacing them with this shape. So this shape is getting the pattern of the lines in its filling. It's filled with that. And then it gets composed with, we take the background away, and we decided to bring it back in a different way, so it's a little, the lines can be noticed a little bit more. And we do other kinds of processing, and this is the result. Yeah, that's good. Yeah, so that's small overview of Touch Designer.
And the thing we like about this software, and Laura mentioned it, I think we can go back to, yeah. The thing we like about this is that it's happening in real time, and I think that's one of the key elements for all of our work, is that it happens in real time. And what we mean by real time is that unlike most video software or most video imagery that we watch, most of it happens in non-real time. So for example, when you watch a movie, this is a movie that's been created in the past. In a year, or in months, however long. It's been edited, it's been composed, and then it's been kind of exported as this finalized object that you hit play and it plays linearly from beginning to end. The type of work that we're creating here is non-linear, and it's happening in real time. So these animations are actually being generated on the fly, on the spot, And what that means is that it allows us to make changes very quickly, so we can prototype things. You know, we can see, hey, what if we change the color here? What if we change the shape? Or what if we, you know, do something to flip this thing upside down? Like, we can make all these changes in real time. Whereas normally, if you don't work in real time, you have to wait. You have to go, okay, what does this look like in blue? And then you hit export and you have to wait for this video to be created, and then you watch it, right? Whereas this is all happening right before your eyes. It's also what allows us to work with interactivity, because you know, you couldn't, you know, modulate a shape of a, you know, within an animation within a video on a normal video, right? It isn't possible. You need this kind of customized software and programming that allows you to do that.
So one of the things that's kind of fun about watching the process of these two aspects of your work is you guys are developing passion projects around collaborating with sculptors, and most recently collaborating with the sculptors that you share the studio with. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about that, because I think it's really exciting.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We are very interested in exploring the relationships between a sculpture and projection. We think there's a lot of potential in uniting these two forms. And it was last year, I guess, that we got a grant from the Canada Council that allowed us to research this, how to integrate projection with a sculpture. And we're very fortunate to know two amazing sculpture artists that, yes, we share our studio space with. They're right next door, and their names are Danira Miralda and Edward Beltran, and you might recognize some of the public art they have in Calgary. And we approached this with a very, you know, experimental questioning, like, what can we do with a sculpture and projection so these two forms are actually, you know, not competing with each other, but complementing each other. Exactly. So we had a bunch of tests. We experiment with different kinds of materials. We experiment with different kinds of techniques. And at the end, what we did was, okay, one of the qualities of a sculpture is that you can see a sculpture in a three-dimensional way. And most of our work in projection mapping is two-dimensional. We are projecting in buildings that, you know, are meant to be seen from one point of view and not many points of views. So with a sculpture, you can go around it and see you know, the whole thing. So we wanted to bring that 360 quality into projection, and we started experimenting with that.
Yeah, so what we just explained is actually quite a daunting task when you think about it, because when you create imagery for a, you know, from a one-sided projector or projection, you know, a projection that's meant to be viewed from one perspective, such as projecting onto the face of a building, you might be working with multiple projectors, but they're all kind of assembling the same type of image, the same side of the image, right? But when you have a three-dimensional object, you have to put the imagery onto each side of the sculpture. So in this case, we were exploring using multiple projectors, and each one of them projects a facet of the complete animation or the complete video content. So in the end, we ended up using 3 projectors. So each projector projects kind of a third of the side of the object that we were projecting onto.
Yes. So maybe we can look at some of the videos of the piece. We call it rotospace. And the thing is, it's actually rotating too. So it's not only being projected in a 360 degrees, it's the platform where it is on, the base, is rotating, meaning that the animations have to match the angle of the rotations.
Yes, and this is again another daunting task. This whole
took a
project
while.
was like a real exploration of technology and kind of cutting edge techniques. And so in order to do this, you have to have an accurate 3D model of the object that you want to project onto. You have to have this 3D model in your software as kind of a digital file that you're able to move around and see, kind of like what architects use to visualize buildings. So to achieve this, we use a technique called photogrammetry. And what that allows you to do is take a real world object. So what you're looking at, this kind of rocket shape here, this is a sculpture that was sculpted by Edward and Denira. They created this form, and in order to then digitize it, we used a technique called photogrammetry. So we took probably 200 or 300 photos of this object.
Like
from
500.
From 500 maybe, from all sides of it. So you take close-ups, you walk around and you snap pictures from every single angle. And then you put it into a piece of software, and that software stitches all these images together to create a quite accurate 3D model of this object. And so once we have this 3D model, we're able to take it into Touch Designer, the video software that we just demonstrated, and we're able to apply animation onto it, kind of like you would paint an object, or as if you were, wrapping it in saran wrap. We apply this animation so that it fits onto the shape of the object, and we then, using a special kind of technique, we line up these digital virtual cameras within the software so they represent where the projectors are placed in the real world. And that's what allows us to kind of project a seamless image on the entirety of this object.
And we also made this fix interactive. The animations could be modified by a sensor that was close to the piece, so you can change the way the animation moved.
So what I find absolutely incredible about that is that you have a piece about this big and this wide, and as it revolves, the three cameras are projecting a seamless image that the observer is watching, and so that at all times the sculpture appears to be glowing from the inside and not from the outside.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
It's hard to capture it in the photos and the
yes.
video.
Yes.
But
It's
it's
so
moving.
three-dimensional and it's so based on three-dimensionality and the ability to walk around it that it kind of, you got to be there to experience it, I guess.
yeah, and so if you think of the evolution of the process from one-dimensional bear through to understanding how the contemporary Calgary piece works, to seeing now how the three-dimensional sculpture works, you can see how the magical pieces that these guys are doing. So we thought we might be able to take a little time to answer some questions, if there are any from our audience about this dimension, and if there aren't, I'm really good on asking questions.
I mean, I think I can add a few things just that I
Sure.
want to talk about. We're working with technology, and that's very obvious in the work, I think. But something that we try to be very aware of and that we're constantly thinking of is, how do we make this technology mean something? How do we make it artful? Because technology is quite cold and we have a relationship with it. People have a relationship with technology that I think we think is a little strange, I mean, most people, the way they interact with technology is through their smartphones or through a computer, and it's through these platforms that multi-billion-dollar companies have created for us, and we use them. Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, all of these are online platforms that a lot of people that's a lot of their experience with technology. And so we're trying to ask people to take a fresh view of what technology can do and how it can become more of an art form and how you can create these expressive, community building, kind of collaborative experiences through technology. And so part of our challenge is kind of translating, the knob. How do you make turning a knob into something meaningful?
Yes.
How do you make a sensor that is, just data really is what we're getting when we get these sensor numbers. They're just a fluctuating number. How do we turn that into something that means something and has a message behind it? And as with digital technology and using it to make art is a very new technique. We have to remember that theater and painting and sculpture and performance and song and music has been around for thousands of years. And, we're working with techniques that have been around for 10 years, maybe. So it's a growing process. We're kind of making it up as we go along sometimes. And I think that's, there's not a lot of it happening, especially in Alberta. And part of what we believe in is trying to promote it and trying to explore it and teach other people how to use it. And so it's part of kind of a bigger movement, I think, that our collective is trying to promote, of appreciating digital art and seeing the potential for it, seeing digital technology not as something that's been handed down to you, but as building blocks that you can use to kind of be who you want to be, create expressive experiences, build communities, tell stories like any other art form.
I think another part that we usually talk about in what we do is that, yes, we work with technology, but we kind of have a love and hate relationship with technology at the same time. And we question the technologies that we use. It's not that, we are following, you do have to be updated, but it's not like, oh, this is a new technology, we're gonna explore it. And it kind of has to speak to your own questions and your own concerns as an artist. And I think for both of us, it's been like, what are the consequences of these technologies? And as you mentioned, what is a meaningful interface, which we are still exploring. We are using knobs. We still think that can be a little bit more enhanced. But when we use the heart sensor for the bear, for example, that was, I think, a direct interaction that was very clear and very meaningful. So it's a constant exploration for us, and a very exciting one, because technologies keep changing, keep evolving. They're very fast. And you were also saying, like, the fact that we can have all these technologies available with us is because the price has changed and they're slightly more accessible than what they used to be even 10 or 5 years ago. And that's the tendency, right? We are talking about now later and 360, cameras and
virtual reality,
augmented reality, like all of that. And those things will get cheaper. And so now an artist, a digital artist, can have like a computer and its own setup in its own studio, but not too expensive. Yeah.
So we have time for a couple of questions. I see on the board we have a question. What would you say is the single biggest technological change in digital art since you started in this field?
Well, in digital art?
I mean, video technology
Computer.
and computer rendering, specifically graphics cards and GPU computing power. Just as a sidebar, a GPU is the part of your computer it's like a computer within your computer that just handles graphics. And thanks to Hollywood and thanks to the video game industry, GPUs, which are cards that are about this big that fit into your computer, have become so cheap. And we're at the point now where a $3,000 piece of hardware can almost emulate reality. It can generate animations that look like real life videos, and it's being used in Hollywood, it's being used in video games, and that sort of leap, when you think about it, if you would have asked yourself, when you compare, video games 20 years ago, 10 years ago to now,
8-bit.
or like, we grew up playing Nintendo, like Mario, like 8-bit.
Some people did.
Yeah, some people did. Or Atari or whatever it is.
Monopoly, some other people.
Monopoly, exactly. And so, jumping within a period of like 20 or 30 years from like crude, 256 different colors to effectively being able to emulate reality in real time. That's just mind-boggling and quite terrifying, to be honest. When you think about what could actually, the idea of reality is quickly slipping away. As soon as we're able to create videos that emulate reality and that, we're not able to distinguish from a video, just imagine the implications of that. I'm curious what you think of the implications of that from a legal perspective are, where a lot of right now we rely on video camera footage as an element of the truth. And this is something that is like, if you see the video camera footage, it is representative of the truth. But imagine living in a society where the video camera footage doesn't mean anything. It could have been created by some teenager in their living room. What would that mean, right?
Well, that's right. And so you see fake videos in politics now, and we, a fellow I know told me that he had 29 cameras in his place of business, and apparently the thief managed to get his face on all of them. But it won't be very long before someone will be able to put somebody else's face, or they probably already can put you could probably already put somebody else's face on those 29 images. Here's another comment. It says, "Thank you so much for the great talk. Is there something you feel you know now about your work that you wish you'd known at the start of your career?"
Budgeting. Finances.
Hey, make sure you pay yourself sometimes.
I asked one of our previous art group what the biggest key to her success was, and she said, how does she put it? I don't place a lot of importance on a high income.
Yes.
No, I think in terms of workflow, prototyping. I think that's been one of our, which sounds like obvious, really, but because sometimes the things that we do have to happen so quickly. At the beginning, we didn't allow ourselves enough time to test things, and it makes a big difference when you even, I was telling you before, we print the bear in a piece of paper and we hang it in the studio and we project in a small scale, and that just changes the way you see it as if you were seeing it in your computer screen while you're doing the work. So it's a completely different experience, and I think we are trying to incorporate more prototyping and allowing more time for experimentation with the technology and testing that we're using. I don't know if you have other...
When I started working with this, I was very focused on the technical side of it, and I think I got carried away sometimes in building the perfect technological tool, and I think that's necessary in some degree because you have to know how to handle technology, but you also have to remember that if your goal is to make art, then you have to consider the art as well, and it's not always about the fanciest technological advancement or the most complex algorithm, because often, when you see this piece here, you don't know, if you hadn't have seen the behind the scenes video, you don't know what's the tech behind this. All the user sees is what they see, right? And so I think if I could tell my 10 years in the past person, don't forget that you're trying to make art as well and not just geek out on the tech, because I certainly I love technology. I mean, that's part of it. I like programming computers and doing that stuff, but we're trying to make art.
Yeah.
And then our last question, and this is something too that that I've noted is that when I've seen the full breadth of your projects, I've been astounded at the short timelines you've had. So our questioner says, I heard you say that you often work under very intense short timelines. Are there any projects that you're particularly proud of when thinking of the short timeline that you had to get it done?
The bear, I would say. That
Yeah,
was one of the shortest timelines. We have 2 weeks, but I think at that time we had this experience before. So in those 2 weeks, we allocated 1 week just to think about the concept, which was risky really, because 1 week just for developing and troubleshooting is very short. But then like we have a week just to really think about what we were going to do. And one day, no, not even 6 hours for setup.
Mm-hmm.
And then also this is part of our work. The life that it has is very short. So the bear was visible from probably 7 p.m. to 11 p.m.
So you set up all this thing and it spend so much more time building this thing, and then it's up for a short period of time. And I mean, that's something we would love to change.
Yes.
Working on longer install periods, having our work shown for a longer period of time, that would be great. It just often doesn't fit inside the festival model. But I mean, this piece behind us, I just wanted to point out also, this piece is created in 4K, like 4K resolution, which is probably much higher than any of your computer screens are capable of displaying, and it's certainly much higher than YouTube is able to display. So what you're seeing here is this kind of, you know, low-res, bastardized version of the actual work. And so this is designed specifically for a 4K display. Working with screen technology has actually been an interesting kind of development that we've discovered. Projectors are so annoying and so expensive, and you often need not just one. Like to cover a building, you might need 3, $40,000 projectors. And they need, if you're doing it outside, they need to be put into a special case so they don't get wet. You need to have a generator. You need to have hundreds of feet of cable. You need to secure the thing so nobody bumps it, nobody steals it. If somebody like touches the projector and it moves literally like a millimeter, your image gets shifted and it like completely is like offline. Projectors are really annoying. So working with screens was like a nice kind of discovery, like, oh, this thing can move around, it's far cheaper, we can flip it around and it's super bright and you can see it in the daylight.
Yes, which is part of the reason that our work has a short living, because it can only be seen in the night.
Well, in the darkness, yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so I did say that we were on our last question, but Justin, if you can just light up, there's an interesting question there that I'm interested in the answer to.
Yeah.
So,
and it's all the way from Montreal, from our buddy Phil. Hi, Phil.
What's your stand on AR and VR? How do you see these alternative realities contributing to our understanding of the real?
Ooh.
Of the real.
Augmented reality is AR, virtual reality is VR. Virtual reality, most people are familiar with, is the headset that you put on. Oculus, HTC Vive, the PlayStation 4 have all developed these recently. It's an emerging technology on the consumer level, but it's been around since the late 80s. Augmented reality is usually viewed through another device right now, such as a cell phone or an iPad, or glasses, where it's, instead of, virtual reality creates an immersive reality where you're kind of replacing your own reality with this created reality. augmented reality is you are augmenting or adapting the real world with digital content. Pokemon Go was the most popular augmented reality. I mean, what do you think about projection mapping and augmented reality?
Projection mapping and augmented reality?
Yeah, you just said that projection mapping is dead.
I think projection mapping is gonna get replaced by augmented reality just because of what you were saying. The projectors are very annoying to work with, very heavy, and when we think about augmented reality, if it's on our glasses, then I can make you a little puppet here to be standing on my hand, and you're going to be able to see it, and soon enough it's going to be contact lenses, or yes, these transparent glasses that will allow you to see reality and other realities. So the question is interesting because is how are we going to use these technologies to understand better our realities when most of the time these technologies are used to augment this reality, or like to put other things that are not in the reality in the reality. So it's
see. I mean, the potential for it when you start to realize that, the conception of reality, and again, this goes back to talking about
what's real,
real-time graphics, and as soon as you can put the ability to essentially create hyper-realistic looking graphics into your eyeballs and place them, alongside real-world objects, your idea of what is real and what isn't is going to become very blurred. And I mean, we're already going into that. Our cell phones are a version of this that, take us away from the world that we're in and create this kind of alternate reality that we swim around in, every 5 minutes or however often we engage with our devices. Mm-hmm. And so the closer that gets into our bodies and the more that's integrated, and really the next level is, and you should see what Elon Musk is doing with his Neuralink, is actually putting electrical nodes into our sensory receptors in our brain so that you don't even need to have it on glasses or in our, on contact lenses. You can stimulate, our visual cortex with small electrical pulses the same way that our eyes do naturally to actually create content, directly into our brain. So I mean, the future is...
Or
simulate taste.
We're even thinking of tricking our senses now. Yeah. Like we don't even need to smell things. You are going to be able to simulate a smell to a very real degree. To talk about virtual reality, because we haven't, I think virtual reality, it's not, the potential of it, it's very different for the augmented reality because it, you are enclosed, you're encapsulated in these goggles, which is kind of nice because you don't have other device that distracts you, which happens often in reality or augmented reality. You have the controllers, yes, you can have 6 degrees of freedom, whatever, but then you are also, especially in storytelling, we're still using cinematic rules. Yes, it's 360, yes, it's immersive, but as we develop more virtual reality storytelling narratives, we're still you need to focus in one thing. You cannot focus in 5 or 6 different ones. There's these tools that are being borrowed by cinematography really to construct this storytelling, like fade outs of light, sound, so it's very different. How can we understand reality with these tools? I'm not sure. I will be more interested in how we create different realities with these tools, because recreating reality, it's what art has done for many, many years, centuries, but I think it gets more interesting when we actually try to see things in a different way, like Impressionism or the vanguard movements. Mm-hmm. That was the start.
So I'm afraid, looking at the time, our time has run out. When this is all loaded on our YouTube channel, Robin from our office will put in contact information so that you can follow Loda and Matt and find out everything that they're doing, which is spectacularly interesting. And as you can see, the future is here in their studio in Bowness in Calgary. And it's been an absolute pleasure to be here with you. I'd also like to thank Yui Savage, who's been at the controls, and Justin Waddell, who's been in charge of our sound and bringing us your questions. And thanks. Here we are in this studio, which is so fantastic. And thanks everybody for coming. And thanks. See you in September when we will be bringing you live Bill Lang and Barbara Milne from the Herringer Kiss Gallery. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks.
Good night.
Thanks.
Bye.
Thanks, guys.
There you go.